Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here, I need you to stop what you're doing right now because something just shifted in the foundation of the global monetary system. Something that the mainstream media is treating as a routine bureaucratic request. But what happened in Frankfurt this week isn't routine. It's a declaration of war against the dollar system itself. Germany wants its gold back, all of it. And Washington is watching very, very carefully. Now, I know what you're thinking. Germany's gold? What are you talking about? Most people don't even know that Germany doesn't actually control its own gold reserves. Most people assume that a sovereign nation's gold sits in vaults in their own capital. They assume that when Germany claims to hold the fourth largest gold reserves in the world, over 3,300 tons, that metal is actually sitting in Frankfurt. They're wrong. For over 70 years, the majority of Germany's gold has been stored in foreign vaults, in New York, in London, in Paris. The Bundesbank, Germany's central bank, has been keeping nearly 2/3 of its national treasure on foreign soil under foreign control, protected by foreign promises. And until this week, they seemed perfectly comfortable with that arrangement. But something changed. The Bundesbank just announced that they want to accelerate the repatriation of their gold reserves. They want their metal back home, in German vaults, under German control, and they want it faster than the original timeline they agreed to. This isn't about storage costs. This isn't about logistics. This is about trust. And when trust breaks down between central banks, between the core institutions that hold the international monetary system together, that's when you know the system itself is starting to fracture. Let me explain what this really means. Because the story they're telling you, the story about modernizing storage practices and satisfying domestic political pressure, that's not the real story. The real story is about what happens when a major economic power looks at the Federal Reserve of New York and says, "We don't believe you anymore." For decades, this arrangement made perfect sense from an American perspective. During the Cold War, keeping European gold in New York was presented as a security measure. If the Soviets rolled across the German border, at least the Bundesbank's gold would be safe in Manhattan. The logic was simple. The Americans were the protectors, the Germans were the protected. But the Cold War ended 30 years ago. The Soviet Union doesn't exist, and yet somehow German gold remained locked in American vaults. Year after year, decade after decade, the Bundesbank accepted promises, certificates, and accounting entries instead of demanding to see their actual metal, until now. The first crack in the system appeared in 2012 when the German Federal Court of Auditors suggested that maybe, just maybe, Germany should verify that its gold actually exists. This wasn't an accusation. This was basic due diligence. If you claim to own 300 tons of gold, you should probably make sure that gold is real, accounted for, and sitting where it's supposed to be sitting. The response from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York was telling. So they offered to let German officials view their gold, but only through a small window. Only 10 bars at a time. No independent verification, no detailed audit, no touching, just looking. When a bank tells you that you can look at your money but you can't count it, what does that tell you about your money? That was when Germany decided to begin the repatriation process. But here's where the story gets interesting. The original timeline was relaxed, almost casual. Germany would slowly, gradually bring their gold home over the course of several years. No rush, no urgency, just a gentle diplomatic transition. But this week, that timeline accelerated. Suddenly, the Bundesbank wants their gold back faster, much faster. And they want to repatriate, not just from New York, but from Paris as well. They want to centralize nearly half of their total reserves on German soil by next year. Why the rush? Let me tell you what happened behind the scenes, what the press releases don't mention, what the diplomatic language carefully avoids saying directly. Germany requested a detailed audit of their gold holdings in New York. They wanted serial numbers. They wanted assay reports. They wanted to verify the weight, the purity, and the provenance of every single bar. This isn't unusual. This is what any sophisticated investor does when they have billions of dollars of precious metals in custody. The Federal Reserve's response was not what you would expect from an institution that prides itself on transparency and accountability. There were delays. There were meetings. There were discussions about protocol and procedure. The Germans asked for their gold. The Americans asked for patience. But patience is a luxury that central banks can't afford when confidence is already shaking. And confidence in the dollar system, confidence in American financial leadership, has been shaking for months. Look at what's been happening in the broader geopolitical landscape. Russia has been dumping U.S. treasuries and accumulating gold at the fastest pace in decades. China has been quietly building its gold reserves while reducing its exposure to dollar-denominated assets. Turkey moved all of its gold reserves out of the United States. Venezuela tried to repatriate its gold from the Bank of England and was told no. One by one, countries that used to trust the Western financial system implicitly are asking uncomfortable questions. Where is our gold? Can we see it? Can we have it back? And one by one, they're discovering that the answer is more complicated than it should be. This is where Germany's request becomes a test case for the entire system. Germany isn't Venezuela. Germany isn't some adversarial state that the United States can simply ignore or sanction. Germany is a NATO ally, a major economic partner, and a core member of the Western financial system. If Germany can't get its gold back quickly and transparently, what does that say about the promises made to every other country that stores their reserves in American vaults? Now here's what I think is really happening. Here's the part that the official statements carefully avoid mentioning. The gold might not be there, not all of it, not in the form that Germany expects, and definitely not available for immediate delivery. For 50 years, the Federal Reserve has been operating what amounts to a fractional reserve system for physical gold. They've been lending German gold to bullion banks. They've been using German gold as collateral for other operations. They've been treating German gold as if it were American gold, available for American purposes. This is how the gold market works. Central banks don't just store gold, they lease it, they lend it, they use it to generate income and to manage the global supply of the metal. When you have 300 tons of gold sitting in a vault doing nothing, the temptation to put that gold to work is enormous. But here's the problem. If you lease out German gold to JP Morgan, and JP Morgan leases it to someone else, and that someone else melts it down and sells it to China, how do you give Germany their gold back when they come asking for it? You can't just print gold. You can't create it electronically. If the physical metal has been consumed by the market, the only way to return it is to buy it back at current market prices. And current market prices are a lot higher than they were when this game started. This is why Germany's repatriation request is so dangerous for the Federal Reserve. It's not just about Germany, it's about every other country that has gold stored in New York. If word gets out that the gold isn't readily available, that it can't be returned quickly and without complications, then every other central bank will want their gold back immediately. And the Federal Reserve doesn't have enough gold to satisfy a global run on their vaults. This is the nightmare scenario that keeps central bankers awake at night. A crisis of confidence that spirals into a crisis of liquidity that destroys the entire system. But Germany isn't backing down, and their reasons go beyond simple due diligence. Germany is looking at the geopolitical landscape and making a calculation. They're looking at American sanctions on Russia. They're looking at the weaponization of the dollar system. They're looking at the United States' willingness to freeze assets, block transactions, and cut countries off from the global financial network when it serves American interests. And they're asking themselves a very reasonable question. If the United States can freeze Russian central bank assets, what stops them from freezing German assets if Germany does something Washington doesn't like? The answer is nothing. Nothing stops them except the promise that they won't. And promises, as Germany has learned from watching Venezuela and Afghanistan and Russia, can be broken when convenient. So Germany wants their gold back not just for accounting purposes, but for strategic purposes. They want to reduce their dependence on American goodwill. They want to diversify their risk. They want to make sure that if the relationship with Washington ever deteriorates, they still have access to their own wealth. This is a profound shift in the balance of power. For 70 years, the United States has been the keeper of the world's gold. Countries trusted America to store their most precious assets. That trust was the foundation of American financial hegemony. But trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. And the signals coming out of Germany suggest that trust is fracturing rapidly. The Bundesbank's latest statements have been carefully worded, diplomatically correct, but the subtext is clear. They want their gold back because they no longer trust the system that has protected that gold for decades. Other countries are watching this situation very closely. If Germany succeeds in repatriating their gold quickly and without incident, it will be seen as a sign that the system still works, that American promises can still be trusted. But if Germany encounters resistance, delays, or complications, it will be seen as confirmation that the emperor has no clothes, that the gold reserves that supposedly back the global monetary system are nothing more than accounting entries and empty promises. This puts the Federal Reserve in an impossible position. They need to satisfy Germany's request to maintain credibility, but satisfying Germany's request might expose the fact that they can't satisfy everyone's requests simultaneously. They need to appear cooperative while buying time to source the physical metal. They need to project confidence while managing a potential crisis that could spiral out of control. And they need to do all of this while other central banks are watching, calculating, and deciding whether they should make similar requests. The timing of Germany's accelerated repatriation schedule is not coincidental. It comes at a moment when the dollar system is already under stress from multiple directions. Inflation is eroding confidence in the currency. Geopolitical tensions are encouraging countries to reduce their dollar exposure. The weaponization of the financial system is making neutrality impossible and forcing countries to choose sides. In this environment, physical assets become more valuable than financial assets. Real things become more important than promises. Gold becomes more valuable than gold certificates. Germany understands this. They understand that in a world of increasing uncertainty, The only assets you can truly count on are the ones you physically control. But there's another layer to this story that goes deeper than simple risk management. Germany's repatriation request is also a signal to their own people and to the world that they are preparing for a different kind of future. A future where the dollar is no longer the unchallenged global reserve currency. A future where regional power centers manage their own monetary affairs. A future where trust between nations cannot be taken for granted. By bringing their gold home, Germany is essentially declaring independence from the post-Bretton Woods monetary system. They are saying that they want to be prepared for whatever comes next, whether that's a multipolar currency regime, a return to gold-backed money, or simply a world where every country manages its own reserves independently. This is why Washington is watching so carefully. This is why every move in this process is being scrutinized, negotiated, and managed with extreme care. Because Germany's gold repatriation isn't just about Germany, it's about the future of American financial hegemony. It's about whether the United States can continue to be the trusted keeper of the world's wealth, or whether that role will fragment and disperse as countries lose faith in American promises. The outcome of this process will determine whether other countries follow Germany's lead, whether France decides to repatriate from New York, whether Italy demands their gold back, whether the Netherlands accelerates their own repatriation timeline. If the repatriation succeeds smoothly, it might actually strengthen the system by demonstrating that American promises can be trusted, that the gold is real, and that countries can access their reserves when needed. But if it fails, if there are delays or complications or excuses, it will trigger a cascade of similar requests that the Federal Reserve cannot possibly satisfy simultaneously. This is the test. This is the moment when we find out whether the foundation of the global monetary system is solid rock or shifting sand. And right now, watching the careful diplomatic language, the extended timelines, and the cautious statements from both sides, it's becoming increasingly clear that the foundation is not as solid as we were led to believe. The gold might not be there. The promises might not be keepable. The system might not be sustainable. Germany wants its gold back. And Washington is watching because they know that if Germany gets it, everyone else will want theirs too. And there might not be enough to go around.